Scholars, now we start to focus on the purpose of money. The reason why is fiscal policy really had problems in the 1960s. Lyndon Baines Johnson was the President of the United States and he fought two wars, a war on poverty and a war in Vietnam. In order to do that, the government kept borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and that caused what we talked about the other day, which was crowding out or stagflation. Because of that, a new economist named Milton Friedman came up with the idea that controlling the money supply can create macroeconomic stabilization. Essentially, that the idea is that with monetarism, the control of the nation's money supply can lessen natural effects of the business cycle. But in order to understand that, we have to understand what the purpose of money is. Simply put, money is a medium of exchange. It's the way you get goods and services. It's accepted by everyone. No one sits there and says, sorry, I'd rather have a sack of potatoes than some cash. Right? Everybody accepts cash in one form or the other. Try to remember that credit cards and credit is forms of cash as well. Also, when people put $1 in the bank, they expect it in 3 months and 6 months and a year to essentially buy another dollar's worth of goods. So it's a store of value. People expect money to retain its value, and that's why they put it away. That's why the United States currency is one of the most desired currencies in the world. Right? The United States currency is considered one of the most desired currencies in the world because it holds its value. And it's also a way to measure value. Although I'm as good looking as Brad Pitt, he gets 25, 30 million a film. I don't think I'd get as much. Right? Because society values him as being more entertaining than me, believe it or not. So it's a way we measure value. Now, in order for money to be good, in order for it to have qualities, it needs to be portable, easy to carry. It needs to be divisible, easily divided. It needs to be accepted by everyone. Okay? It needs to go around and people say, yes, I'll accept your currency. It also needs to be stable, all right? Meaning holding its valuable. And believe it or not, the US dollar is pretty durable. But most importantly, in order for something to be desirable, in order for it to be scarce, money needs to be scarce. Meaning it needs to be limited and it needs to be desirable. That's a quick little micro review. In order to be scarce, you need to be limited and desirable. Because if you ask anyone, do you know anyone who says, yes, I have enough money, I am content? Or do you have people say, please, sir, could I have some more? Right? And that's the idea. Money generally is in a limited supply. In order to counter currency, there are four different ways to count money. There's the M1 money supply, the M2 money supply, and M3 and M4. For this course, we focus on 1 and 2. 3 and 4 is more like money for loans, for corporate loans, for mortgages, large-scale loaning. The most common form of money is M1, all right? That's currency, paper and coins. It's also money that we consider now money, all right? That's a key word there, now, because it's money you have right now. You don't have to go anywhere to get it. You have it right now. So it's currency. It's your ATM debit card. It's traveler's checks, but traveler's checks are really becoming something that people don't use anymore. But it's another form of cash. It's really currency and coins and checkable deposits like your ATM debit card that you use as cash. All right? So it's money you have nearby. So we did this in 2000. And if you calculate it, these really aren't billions. They're essentially trillions. So the M1 money supply in 2000, I know it's a little dated, was $1.2 trillion. I use these old numbers because then I compare them to today's numbers to show you how they can inject more money into supply than before. All right? But we're not going to be doing, well, we may. Now, M2 money is really near money, money that's nearby. All right? It's not a lot of people have this, but a lot of people used to have when I was young. Only a couple students usually who are in the bank, who have the Bank of Richardville, still have the old-fashioned passbook savings account. The idea with M2 money is if you have a savings account, but you can't access it with an ATM debit card, you have to actually get up and go to the bank. So therefore, it's not here, it's near. So generally, a lot of people keep the majority of their money in savings. They don't keep it on them. That's not really good financial habits. So what we're talking about in M2 money is money that is nearby. So it's savings accounts. It's small-time deposits, sometimes called certificate of deposits, that give you interest for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. They give you a preferred rate of interest. If the going rate is at 1%, they may give you 1.25% or 1.5% to keep the money for 2 years. This way, the bank has a much more stable source to lend money out. And it also can, money market mutual funds are money that banks keep in accounts where they loan them out to credit card holders. So that plus M1, remember that's a key, M1 plus small-time savings deposits, CDs, money market accounts, okay, those all constitute M2. And the M2 money supply, the M2 money supply in 2000 was 5.7 trillion, not billion, trillion. But we could see if we look today and go to the Federal Reserve, which we can do, we could see that it was 7 trillion. Let's scroll up. And we see now M2 is $14 trillion. And M1 is $3.6 billion. 14 trillion and 3 trillion for a total of $17 trillion that are in the economy. Okay? Oh, I'm sorry, it scrolls so fast. Let me just go up. And you can see that really indicates and shows us how the money is being expanded. It also tells us that by people keeping money in an M2 account, or essentially people keeping money in savings, and it shows that they're still not 100% sure about the economy. They're still a little unsettled by them keeping so much money in savings. But if we go back to our presentation, we could see back in 2000, it was 5.7 trillion. It was doubled because of the financial crisis of 2008. And now it's going to probably even go higher as people are very unsure of the economy because of what's going on. So M1 is now money, M2 is near money. Now banks serve a very, very important purpose. There are lots of different what we call financial intermediaries, meaning intermediate. Money doesn't sit in a bank. It gets lent to it by people who lend the bank money, people like you who have a savings account, or people like me who have a savings account, or businesses, or the government. And then the first thing the bank does is loan that money out. And they loan that money out to households, business, and government. Without banks, money is like blood in the economy. So without banks, money can't circulate. And if money doesn't circulate, the GDP goes down, unemployment goes up, aggregate demand moves inward, aggregate supply moves inward. Okay? And there's no multiplier effect. There's no way to calculate a multiplier, figure things out without banks. That's why they're vitally important to the economy, and they're extremely heavily regulated. There are different types of money, as you can see here. Commodity money, which is cattle, gold, representative money. If you zoom in a little bit on this, I could try real quick. Let me just, you could see here, I thought I'd be able to blow it up. Pardon me. Oh, let's get rid of that. Okay. Well, what the idea is, these are silver certificates. Okay? And what they do is, you used to be able to go to a Federal Reserve bank. We'll learn more about those and actually get silver or gold. But what we use now is fiat money or legal tender. You see it says on the top here, a Federal Reserve note. All right? This money, this note is legal tender for all debts, both public and private. And it's issued by the United States of America, the Department of the Treasury. All right, this is essentially what money we use now. It's legal tender. Technically speaking, it only has worth if there's a limited supply of it. What affects the demand for money is income, prices, and interest rates. Once again, if income is high and people making lots of money, there's going to be huge demand for money. If prices drop, okay, that could actually decrease the demand for money, because as employers start to employ less, all right, there would be less people who have jobs, so they'd have less money. Interest rates are a crucial factor, which we'll learn more about. Low interest rates increase the demand for money. High interest rates decrease the demand for money. This is all done through the Bureau of Economic Analysis under the United States Department of Commerce. And they have an enormous role in essentially gathering statistical data to tell us how the economy is performing. Okay? Now, they used to have you calculate this formula. But the idea of income velocity is to find out how many times a dollar is spent on final goods. And that can help affect the GDP. One way to get people to pass the hot potato is to give very, very low interest rates. So there's no opportunity cost to keep your money in the bank. If you're only getting 1% or 0.5%, you might as well go spend it. And that speeds up the economy because it creates more spending. If the economy is inflating, you sit there and make interest rates in a bank 12% or 13% or 10%. And people say, oh, according to the rule of 72, if I'm making 10%, in 7.2 years, my money could double. I'm not going to spend it. So if they don't spend money, it slows down the economy and gets rid of inflation. So that's how you could really adjust the income velocity, or how many times a dollar is spent on final goods. And that's important because that could lead to inflation. This is, I'm going to try to make it a little bit, but this is a money supply graph, okay? The supply of money is perfectly inelastic. It's available whether people want it or not. It's the demand for money that changes the interest rates. It's a demand for money that causes movement along the curve concerning interest rates. Interest rates really are adjusted by the money supply. As you can see, if the money supply is easy, interest rates drop. If the money supply is tight, interest rates rise. And the quantity demanded for money will be less at higher interest rates, and it'll increase at lower interest rates. Okay. And here we see the definition of monetarism and Milton Friedman, who was the gentleman who created this idea. And the next lesson, eventually what we'll be getting into, is the Federal Reserve System. And that's how monetarism is achieved, through the Fed. You hear a lot about that. But the Federal Reserve is essentially a central bank in the United States. Long story short, in 1907, there was a panic in the United States. And this panic was staved off. It was essentially an economic crisis. And banks were failing all over. And a gentleman named J.P. Morgan owned half or more, nobody really knows, of the banking interests in the country. And what he did is he called all the bankers, all the major bankers from all over the country, into his bank, into his office, where they stayed for 24 hours till he decided which banks he would save and which banks would be allowed to fail. And he also lent the federal government a ton of money so it wouldn't fail. And it staved off a panic. However, many progressives with the progressive movement didn't like the idea that one person had all this control. So therefore, they started to create the Federal Reserve System, which we'll learn about next time. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions or any concerns. All right? I hope this helps with your homework. Be well and stay well.